everyone to Stadium Journeys Obstructed Views, the show where a couple of guys in a couple of countries have a couple of beers and discuss a stadium somewhere in the world and their experiences there. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
And we are excited to be with you here tonight. Before we get started, please make sure to subscribe to the Stadium Journey YouTube channel, like this video, and leave a comment. The official Stadium Journey review of today's venue can be found at stadiumjourney.com, or the link directly to the review can be found in the comments below. Okay, so let's get rolling. Dave, what are you drinking today?
So I have one from a small brewery that I picked it up at a small brewery in Guelph, but it wasn't the small brewery where this was made. So this is a Stonehammer Dark Ale from Stonehammer Brewing in Guelph, but I bought it at Fixed Gears in Guelph. So I'm not quite sure how that works, but whatever. It's pretty good. It's a dark ale, not quite as heavy as Guinness, but more akin to like what I would a Waterloo Dark, if you're familiar with Waterloo Dark, which you're probably not, being way down there. But yeah, it's that sort of part way between your pale ale or your heavy pale ale and like a Guinness. It's not quite as heavy as Guinness, but it's pretty good. What do you got?
Well, I did notice your can is very dark and shiny. So, so I have a Belgian white beer today from New Haven, Connecticut, from Overshores Brewing. I got to brush up on my French here. It's a Blanc de Blanche wit from Overshores Brewing in New Haven, Connecticut. And I have found over the course of this show, we've been doing this show almost a year now, that I really like Belgian white beers. So this is another one that is right up my alley, apparently.
Well, my people are happy to welcome you, as of course my Belgian national soccer jersey hangs in the background, as it does always. So welcome to our good beer.
Hey, a great thing about Obstructed Views, we pick out different beers every week, and I've really been able to expand my taste buds a little bit. So you watch Obstructed Views, you learn a few things. Look at that. So if we were visiting today's destination, you might be drinking a Beast in the East IPA from First Line Brewing in Orchard Park, New York, because today we are talking about Highmark Stadium, the newly christened Highmark Stadium, home of the Buffalo Bills. Before we dive in, let's take a look at the stadium vitals. Okay, so we're talking about former Ralph Wilson Stadium. And I guess any discussion, we're recording this at the beginning of 2022. So any discussion about that stadium for the Buffalo Bills has got to talk about what's going to happen next, because there are talks, intense talks in the Buffalo area about a new stadium for the Bills.
Yeah, definitely. And even before it gets into the intensity of who pays and who doesn't pay and who pays how much, it seems to be the where shall it be, and that's a heated debate, because the Highmark Stadium, I'm going to mess that up at some point today, by the way.
Well, that's why I'm giving both names. So
it will be Ralph Wilson Stadium at some point in time. But Highmark Stadium is in Orchard Park, and Orchard Park is about 12 miles south of downtown Buffalo. And I can't say I've been overly flattering of Orchard Park, the town. To me, it's a football stadium and an empty parking lot. Lots of empty parking lots. Like, there is not much around it. But
you can compare it to maybe Foxborough.
Maybe
compare it to the setup in Kansas City, perhaps.
Sort of. But because of the age of Orchard Park, and I don't know enough about the dynamics, but I do know the age of Highmark Stadium. It was built in 1973, and they do not have like the Patriot Place that they do in Foxborough, of course. Similar to Kansas City, it seems to be all about the tailgating.
Right. It was built right along the time of the NFL AFL merger, and Buffalo was one of those cities, much like Boston was, that their old stadium did not. The old, was it the War Memorial, right?
Yes.
Was not up to. NFL said you had to have 50,000 seats to come play with us. So Buffalo had to build a new stadium. The Patriots had to build a new stadium, and I always thought, having been to both of them, I don't know how many of our listeners here have ever been to the old Foxborough, Schaefer/Sullivan/Foxborough Stadium, but they were very similar setups to me. The difference was they kind of finished Buffalo. They kind of finished Ralph Wilson Stadium, so it was more enclosed, and it was didn't have that temporary look that Foxborough always had. So Buffalo was always a much superior facility in my mind, but it did
Interesting.
have that old 70s look to it.
Interesting that you would describe it as more closed, and I have zero experience or knowledge of old Foxborough Stadium, but that's one thing that I took away from Ralph Wilson Stadium, which is where I went, in '99, the first time I went, is it was open. It was wide open. And I learned really quickly. I only did this once. The very first time we went in late December, and the guy who bought tickets for us got in the upper deck, and that was the first and last time I ever sat up there. And I would never ever. Well, I would recommend sitting up there in like September.
September, I bet those are great places. Yeah,
maybe early October. It's not terrible in the winter months. Up there is terrible because the wind just buzzes right through. I have never, ever, ever been so cold in my life. And I often tell my family, I really had to go to the bathroom bad, but I couldn't because I had a frozen brick of urine in my bladder, I think. It was that cold. Now I've been a number of other times. I choose my dates a little bit more carefully, and I make sure that I'm in that lower bowl.
Well, our first trip there was in 07. We went up and saw the Patriots play. That was during their undefeated season. And we picked a game. The Patriots went up there in November, mid-November, I believe, right near Pam's birthday. And wouldn't you know it, they switched the game. They flexed the game out to the nighttime, to the ESPN spot.
Okay.
So our nice 1 o'clock afternoon game in the sun turned into a Buffalo winter in November. So yeah, it was pretty cold and windy up there that time too.
And some of those night games where and really I think you really have to include more than just about any other place in the NFL. You have to include the fans as part of the discussion in Buffalo. And I recall hearing and this might actually be the game that you were at, where they had flexed it down into the evening, and the fans just decided, I get there normally at 9 or 8 for a 1 o'clock game, and I'm going to get there at 9 or 8 for an 8 o'clock game. So they had that much more time to drink and be pretty messed up.
Is Buffalo the top tailgating spot in the NFL? It's got to be up near it.
It's up there. I would say in the top. I would say in the top 3. The only one that really comes to mind as comparable would be Kansas City.
That came to my mind as well. Yes.
But I'm not sure of another one that would really come close.
And what's the deal with the plastic tables in Buffalo?
Well,
they hate plastic tables.
Well, yeah, I could say I took a couple guys down to the BIlls game with me, and they had never been to an NFL game before. And we pulled into the lot, and you had to get a wristband there. So we got it. We were getting our wristbands paying, and look over to the left, and there's an RV there. And there's a guy on top of the RV, and he jumps off the RV, does a somersault, lands on his back, and boom, flattens these tables. So the BIlls tailgating scene is definitely unique. You can decide for yourself whether it's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing. when our friend Sean McDonald did the one season whirlwind through the entire league, he got a fairly significant amount of press for saying in his book that Buffalo had by far the drunkest fans in the NFL, right? And
I think there was actually a study that confirmed that opinion.
I'm not sure how you'd study that, but conventional wisdom agrees. And they have coined themselves, I guess I would say probably in the last 5 years, that they have coined themselves BIlls Mafia. And I think they just got this thing from like professional wrestling where they jump into tables and break tables. The last time we were there, they played the Saints and the Saints killed them. So that kind of alleviated one of the major problems in Buffalo, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second. And a ton of people left. And as we were coming back to the car, there were like piles of broken tables all over the place. Like seriously, like people literally go and buy tables for one tailgate, and then they
Destroy them,
jump through them, crash through them, or whatever, and then that's it.
and it's not like you can like make a bonfire out of the destroyed tables. They're plastic, so
I did see some wooden ones, and they did set some of those on fire. But yeah, it's a totally different experience. Me as a far more conservative sports fan, it's not really my scene. I mean, we tailgated, we sort of hung back and sort of watched what was going on around us. And there are I would say that there are multi-level parking lots happening. The closer you get, the more less rambunctious it is. Where if you're in, and I was looking on Google Maps the other day, they actually call it the mud lot. If you're down in the mud lot, that can be where it's like really crazy.
I know the 2 times I've been, I've parked in people's yards.
I've done that before too.
So you're not going to, you're not going to go crazy and rip up somebody's house. And both games I went to were against the Patriots, and Bills fans have this reputation as being rowdy and stuff, but I didn't get any problems either time I was there. Head to toe Patriots gear. Maybe it's because the combined score of the 2 games I went to is like, something like 89-13. So it kind of took a lot of the fight out. But I've seen friendly Bills fans. It's been my experience. Wonderful, supportive. And we've said before, if any city deserves to have a winning team, it's Buffalo, whether you're talking hockey or football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the Buffalo fans might be a little off put here by who's putting this together, the Patriots fan and the Dolphins fan. So, but now the first time I went, I again, conservative fan, and I'm not wearing my own gear, my own team's gear. And I actually really learned this from Buffalo. It was so cold, I didn't have any like winter gear anyway. But there were a few guys near us who were wearing Dolphins gear, and I had gone to see Bills and Dolphins, and they were it wasn't awful, but like they were being razzed the whole game. Yeah. Now the Bills won that game, so that could have something to do with it as well.
So yeah, the stadium itself, like you were saying, it's parking lots around the stadium, but it's also a residential neighborhood. So there's really not a village. There's no ballpark village. There's no Patriot place. There's no you get in Pittsburgh where you get all the shops around the stadium.
Right.
It's really kind of isolated, and I think that's one of the big issues with the stadium being out in Orchard Park is the access getting in and out takes a long time, and B, I forgot what B was already. Look at that. And the fact that there's nothing around the stadium.
Yeah. There is a speckling of one thing here, one thing there. There is a community college like further up, which I only knew because I saw it on Google Maps. I can't say I've actually seen it. So as far as the eye can see, you're seeing stadium and parking lots. Maybe the houses across the road. I think the other thing that it does is it gives you a definite indication as to where the NFL is going. And it's one of the big worries I have for Buffalo. So Buffalo, not that long ago, they were playing a game this season in Toronto, right? And there was a lot of, when that was going on, there was a lot of chatter that this was going to be the future, that the Bills were just going to pick up and move out of Buffalo. They were going to settle in Toronto, bigger market, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Toronto did not embrace the Bills and in my opinion, killed any chance they ever had of getting the NFL. Well, maybe not ever, but in the recent future, let's say. But you look at at cities that have now been priced out of the NFL, and you look at Oakland, priced out of the NFL. If you look at San Diego, priced out of the NFL. If you look at St. Louis, oh my gosh, St. Louis, which may not have had
the bigger city, yeah,
may not have had the greatest stadium in the world, but it wasn't awful. It was a dome. There are worse ones still kicking around, and priced out of the NFL. So my worry is, how is Buffalo even going to build something that is comparable, right? That is, look at what Las Vegas built, look at what Los Angeles built,
Atlanta,
Atlanta.
Minnesota, the last 4 stadiums, all over $1 billion.
Huge dollars. I don't know what San Francisco built. I'm sure it was up there in the $800 million range or whatever. But I worry that is just not in the economy
it's not happening in Buffalo,
for the Bills.
No, it's not going to happen.
And there's still this argument: should it be downtown? Should it be in Orchard Park? And I got to be honest. I've kind of read both sides. Our friend Andrew Kulik wrote a big article in Art Voice on why it should be downtown, all the pluses of downtown. I see some issues with downtown. Do I think the tailgating will be as good downtown? No, not even close. I don't. I think the culture would totally change from the Bills and their fans downtown. Is that a bad thing? That's a good question. That's a good question.
Well, judging by what we've said, maybe not.
Maybe not. I will say this though, and like I said, I'm more of a conservative fan. I'm not about. I don't enjoy being around, a lot of drunk people or whatever. But some of the stuff that BIlls Mafia has done when it has come to donations has been unbelievable. Where they would ride some player for doing something dumb, and then you'd read a story about how members of BIlls Mafia had donated like $100,000 to his charity in the last 2 weeks or something like that, which is unheard of, but and absolutely fantastic.
Think of what they did with Josh Allen when his grandmother passed away recently, and all the donations they got that ended up building a new wing, a new children's wing, I think, of the hospital in Buffalo.
Yeah, that's pretty.
So you're right.
That's pretty awesome. I think the other thing that we got to remember with Buffalo is that you do have to cater to the Niagara region, Southern Ontario. Now, is it better? Are they better serviced downtown? I guess that all depends on how much parking you still have after you build the stadium. Are they better serviced, out in Orchard Park? That's a good question. Me personally, the stadium itself has never really bothered me, other than being up. That's way too cold. I don't want to be up there. Did I think it was awful? I think they've done a pretty good job keeping it up, all things considered. I would say that it does bother me that O.J. Simpson is still on the Bills Wall of Fame. That bothers me, but not my decision. So I don't know. I don't know what a new stadium would look like. There are just so many questions. And as not being a resident of Buffalo, I'm not sure how much my opinion weighs in.
I agree with you, Dave. What I was told about the stadium before I visited did not match the reality of what I saw. It was, it's definitely not one of the marquee buildings in the NFL, but it certainly isn't horrible. It's a product of its time and its age. So is it time for a new one? Absolutely. What's going to happen? I don't know. There seems to be a pretty clear split where you've got a camp that really is pushing for the downtown stadium, and there's a camp that's really pushing. And I think the Bills ownership is in this camp where they want to build in Orchard Park.
And I think the mayor has kind of chimed into the mayor of Buffalo and said, well, we don't really have a ton of space down here. But that being said, I'm sure they could find a way if they really wanted to find a way. But time's ticking. Like, I think their lease runs out at the end of next season. So
end of 2023, yes. And I know that the mayor or the governor or the owners or somebody has come out and said, nope, there will not be a dome in Buffalo. The weather's part of the experience. The weather is part of the experience here.
That's
like
true.
You said, if you go early, the weather in Buffalo is wonderful. Yeah, but it can get nasty. I remember one of the times I went up, we were so worried about getting snowed into Buffalo. We actually had a snowstorm at home in Massachusetts, and we had to stay in Buffalo an extra day. So go figure.
That's awesome. I would be remiss if I didn't add that the Bills probably have one of the most recognizable songs for their celebrations. They have the Shout song, which they've tweaked a little bit to make a little bit more Bills centric. But yeah, as a Dolphins fan, man, do I hate that song. I mean, I love how recognizable it is, and it's great for the team and everything. But yeah, when Jim Kelly was throwing touchdowns to Thurman Thomas and Andre, I hated that song.
Oh, we all did. That run in the 90s, man. Oh.
And people, people forget, maybe because they're all too young. And I mean, I guess I'm too young. The Bills do have 2 championships. Now they're both AFL championships, but still they have 2 championships.
And I don't know, making the Super Bowl 4 years in a row, no one else has ever done it.
No,
you can't sell that accomplishment short.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And even the story of Jim Kelly and his career arc and going to school in Miami, and oh my gosh, I'm not going to Buffalo. That's the only place I don't want to go, and ended up playing in Houston in the USFL, and then the USFL died, and then the Bills weren't going to trade him, and now he is a favorite son of Buffalo. Absolutely. And I think he loves Buffalo just as much as they love him.
Yep. And the story of his fight, his cancer fight, and his recovery is just inspiring. And we've spoken about the city of Buffalo and how it's another one of those underrated cities to go visit. You don't think, hey, I'm going to go to Buffalo and have a great time. But the scenery, the things to do in Buffalo, of course, you got Niagara Falls very close by. Downtown Buffalo is a great city for walking. The Canal District there is a great scenery, and you can stare across the river into Canada. And the food scene in Buffalo is out of this world. Absolutely. I know the old Patriots broadcasters when Gil Santos and Gino Capoletti were doing the radio broadcast, they would rave about where they would go to eat in Buffalo. So, it's more than just chicken wings, folks. Let me tell you, there's all kinds of great places there.
That's true.
So that's our look at Highmark Stadium. Get there while you still can. It's a worthy stadium journey. We hope to see you there real soon. Cheers.
Cheers.